He pretends to be weak but is the strongest S-rank hero. In the year of 952, the demon lord Claudine led his 4 generals to fight against the land of Catalan located in the northern part of the central continent. The battle raged on for 7 days and 7 nights. The only person who was able to stop the Dark Lord is the people's hero, Jed Dauphin. Jed Dauphin walked into the throne room of the Dark Lord calmly, and the Dark Lord welcomed him with a smirk on his face. The Dark Lord was sitting comfortably on his throne with his head resting on his chin. The Dark Lord wondered why he was alone and thought perhaps his people abandoned him. Jed calmly reaches for his sword on his back and attacks the Demon Lord in a flash. The Demon Lord blocks his attack and conjures several magic circles to attack Jed. He unleashes magic, but Jed dodges back. He keeps casting magic attacks at Jed, but he dodges them all easily. Jed runs towards him and knocks his staff out of his hand, but he jumps into the air and grabs it back. He uses the momentum to strike the ground, stopping Jed in his tracks. The Demon Lord is impressed with Jed's skill and asks him to join his army. Jed refuses, and the Demon Lord tells him fighting for humanity won't profit him. Jed tells him he's fighting to get his treasure and rescue the princess. The Demon Lord is surprised. It has been Jed's dream to become a rich man and marry the princess, and ever since a blonde man told him his dreams can become true if he defeats the Demon Lord. Jed took his family's treasure and embarked on a journey to become a hero. The Demon Lord tells Jed he's fighting for a weird reason, and Jed tells him to surrender. He tells the Demon Lord he heard the princess is very pretty, and the Demon Lord wonders if Jed is really a hero. Jed smiles like a deranged maniac, thinking about how the princess will fall for him when he finally rescues her. This thought fires Jed up and gives him more motivation to fight the Demon Lord with renewed grit. He launches another attack at the Demon Lord and defeats him with one swift strike. Jed sheaths his swords, stating that the power of dreams can make someone overpowered. The staff of the Demon Lord rolls to his feet and he picks it up. He opens a magical pouch and stores the staff in it. Jed is so hyped to rescue the princess that he literally sprints at light speed to the dungeon. He opens the dungeon door commending how beautiful the princess looks, but then he notices the person isn't female. It wasn't the princess of Catalan who was captured, but the prince of Catalan. Jed is completely heartbroken. The prince tries to walk over to Jed, but he trips and falls into Jed's arms. They share a moment, and the prince tells Jed he will be rewarded. Jed's imagination gets the better of him and he doesn't like what he imagined. He backs away from the prince, telling him not to bother with the reward because he did it for the sake of the kingdom. He brings out a teleportation scroll from his magical pouch and hands it to the prince. He tells him to take as much time as he needs with his teleportation. Jed brings out another teleportation scroll and teleports himself away from the prince. After Jed is gone, the prince looks down at the teleportation scroll and smiles sinisterly. Jed teleports to his room drenched in sweat. He is exhausted from the battle, but his anger knows no bounds. He wonders where the princess is and why the Demon Lord kidnapped the prince instead. He is sad his dream didn't come true, but he takes solace in the fact that he was able to defeat the Demon Lord. Suddenly, a video game disc glows and Jed feels the urge to go on an adventure. Meanwhile, Prince Ruda returns to the castle and the guards are shocked to see him. He enters the throne room and his sister and the king both welcome him. He tells his father he's free and his father asks him how he's doing. The prince tells him not to worry because he is fine. He tells the king he found something interesting. Jed is playing the video game and doing everything in his power to protect the princess in the video and embark on a path to become a hero. It's a rainy night and the village is being attacked. The assailant enters young Jana's home, and she clings to her mother for safety. The assailants tower over them, looking down at them maliciously. Young Jana manages to escape, but her mom is not so lucky. She runs through the village trying to get to safety. She trips and falls, making her lose her will to live. The Demon King gives her a hoodie to shield her from the rain and offers her his hand. She takes it and he takes her to his castle to keep her safe. Upon arriving at the castle, Girl 1 is happy to be safe, but suddenly, the Demon King disintegrates. Jana looks at where he once stood with tears in her eyes. Jana wakes up panting and instinctively throws a knife at Jed's picture, which is hanging on her wall. She is much older now and it was all a dream, but it felt too realistic. She sits up and vows to get her revenge on Jed. The 4 knights of Claudine helped the Demon King conquer and rule the north. Jana was one of them. During the Battle of the Kingdom of Catalan, they were defeated one after the other by Jed. After their defeat, they each went their separate ways. But Jana hid her identity and went to the Kingdom of Catalan to avenge the Demon Lord. Jana prepares to leave her room in the inn. She looks back at Jed's picture with disdain, vowing to find him and avenge Lord Claudine. Before she can do that though, she has to put in some work at a cafe. Jana puts on her work clothes and all the customers of the store are stunned by how good she looks. They give her their orders and she notes them down. She has been working at the cafe for 3 months now and her objective was to gather information about Jed. With time though, the job, her colleagues, and the customers grew on her. She recalls how she found herself in such a predicament while moving through the city one day. She stumbled upon Lord Claudine's staff displayed in a pawn shop. She stops outside the shop and looks it over through the glass to make sure it's the genuine staff, and after careful inspection, she is convinced it's genuine. She wonders why it's in a pawn shop. She looks down at the price tag and she can't believe how expensive the staff is going for. She holds out a handful of coins, but they won't be enough to purchase the staff. She's convinced the staff has more worth than she does in her current state. She decides to find a way to get the staff without compromising her disguise. She looks back to see a queue of people outside the cafe. The cafe has a hiring sign and Jana decides to apply for the job. Jana is pouring ketchup on some rice, and she wonders why she hasn't heard a word about Jed since she came to the city. She thinks he must be protected by someone very powerful. Just as she's thinking about that, Jed walks into the shop and a waiter greets him. She tells Jana to attend to Jed at his table. Jana tells her she would go over to his table. She walks over and greets Jed. She's about to ask him what he wants when she realizes it's him. She calls out his name in fright and he greets her casually. She wonders how he found the cafe and if he intends to bring her down for good. She concludes that he would have brought her down for good during the battle if he wanted to, so he must be at the cafe for something else. She decides to find out his reason for coming to the cafe. Jed doesn't recognize Jana and he thinks she's so cute, commending the cafe as the best made cafe in Catalan. She asks him what he would like to order, and he orders a set meal. She takes his order, surprised that he came to the cafe just to eat. She still thinks he has an ulterior motive. He tells her he heard the cafe provides other services and she becomes apprehensive, calling him a pervert. He tells her the cafe management said customers can take pictures with maids if they order a set meal. Jana's boss comes, scolds her, and apologizes to Jed. She leads both to the photo booth and takes a picture of them. Jed leads the cafe and Jana is surprised he didn't recognize her. A spy peeps through his window looking at Jed as he passes by. He looks at a picture of Jed and Jana that he took when Jed was ordering his meal at the cafe. The Catalan spy rushes out of the house and runs down an alley. He is moving very quickly so he isn't caught. He took a picture of Jana serving Jed at the cafe while spying on him. He never thought he would come across one of the big four knights while spying on Jed. He hurries back to the castle to give the king his report. On his way, the Catalan spy bumps into another spy and he wonders if he's a member of a different group. The other spy runs out of the alley and stops in front of a lady. The lady asks him what he wants, and he brings out a pack of revealing lady clothes which he magically puts on the lady. The lady immediately becomes embarrassed and tries to hide herself. The spy does the same thing for other ladies who are close to him, and they all call him a pervert. Pag takes pictures of the ladies in their new outfits. The Catalan spy wonders if the other spy is really a spy under the king. The ladies come together to catch the perverted spy and beat him up. The spy begs them to stop, but they show him no mercy. The Catalan spy decides that the other spy's activity is none of his business. At that moment, the hood of the spy falls off and the Catalan spy recognizes him as Pag, one of the four knights of the Demon King. Pag is an experienced photographer who is obsessed with magical girls. During the Catalan battle, he defeated the Rose Female Knight Order of Catalan all by himself, and he made sure to take several pictures of them in their new outfits. After the defeat of the Demon King and the conclusion of the war, Pag published the photo album of the Rose Order. Maria, the captain of the Rose Order, was not happy to see the published album and she promises to punish Pag for his insolence. She looks over at a table piled high with fan letters, wondering why she's getting them. Her assistant comes into her office, bringing in more fan letters, and she's surprised. She walks over to her window and silently vows to tear Pag to pieces when she finds him. Coincidentally, as she looks down, Pag runs past her window. He's being chased by several women. Maria is surprised to see Pag in the city. Jed frames the photo he took with Jana at the cafe and puts it on a stand in his sitting room. There's a knock at the front door and Jed goes over to open the door. Pag is standing outside, completely drenched in sweat. He greets Jed, saying he hasn't seen him for a long time. Jed isn't happy to see Pag and tries to shut the door in his face, but Pag holds the door. He begs Jed to let him in so he can lay low for a while and escape the people of Catalan who are chasing him. Jed asks him why he always comes to him when he's on the run, and Pag tells him that's what friends do. Pag begs Jed to stop being mean and let him in. Jed tells Pag he doesn't consider him a friend because he was once part of the Big Four. Pag is heartbroken by Jed's remark and he falls to the ground looking dejected. Jed concedes and he finally agrees to let Pag in. Jed tells him they are enemies and he can't keep using the friend excuse to stay at his house. Jed tells Pag to take a shower before going to bed since he has been on the run all day. Jed tells him there's enough food in the fridge and they could play some video games together later. Jed tells Pag to tell him if he needs anything so he can get it before the stores close. He tells Pag not to touch any of his stuff and Pag tells him he just wants to have a look around. Pag notices the picture Jed took with Jana at the cafe and he's surprised. He asks Jed why he took a picture with Jana and Jed finally figures out that Jana was one of the knights of the Demon King. The spy returns to the castle and gives the pictures to the king and the king is furious that the hero has contacts with the 4 knights. He asks the spy where he got the photos from and the spy tells him he took the photos while following Jed around. The king asks the spy who gave him the order to follow Jed around and he tells the king Prince Reddy gave him the order. The king wonders if the prince is trying to trick them into punishing the hero. The chief minister starts accusing Jed of colluding with the demon lord. The minister tells the king to take action and the king issues an order for Jed, Pag, and Jana to be captured. He then says they will execute one of the big 4, Rock Barkhad, the next day. The prince walks down into the dungeon holding a lantern and wearing a disguise. The 2 guards on duty notice him but don't recognize him so they ask him for his identity. He lets go of the lantern, breaking it in the process and turns into a black fog. He attacks the guards and knocks them out. He remanifests into his human form with his disguise still on. He walks up to Rock's cage to find him chained to the walls. He tells him it's been a long time since they last spoke to each other. He tells Rock he heard they were going to execute him the next day. Rock immediately recognizes the prince and asks him what he's doing down in the dungeon. The prince takes off his disguise and asks Rock not to be so cold towards him. He tells Rock he can facilitate his escape and help him rebuild the Demon Lord's army. He tells Rock he can take him as a hostage if he likes as well. Rock tells him there's no point because the battle is over and he failed. The prince phases through the bars of Rock prison and rushes up close to him. He asks Rock if he has forgotten the promise he made to him. Rock tells him Claudine is dead and he can't do anything on his own. Prince Reddy tells him he will find another way without him and bids him farewell. Prince Reddy leaves the prison cell, calling him Lord Invictus instead of Rock, and Rock feels bad about the demise of Claudine. Jed and Pag play some video games at Jed's apartment. Jed asks Pag if there is a person named Lord Invictus with green hair among the knights of the Demon Lord's army. Pag tells Jed he's named Rock. He tells Jed he's the eldest son of an incredibly strong sword family. He tells Jed that rumor has it that he has a younger sister who is even stronger than him. He tells Jed that he once fought Rock and the experience was very scary. Jed asks Pag why Rock joined the Demon Lord's army and Pag tells him he's not sure but he thinks it has something to do with the legend of the Kingdom of Catalan. He tells Jed it's the legend of the Black Dragon del Toro. Jed thought so too. The legend says that out of twins born in the Kingdom of Catalan, one is to be sacrificed to the bat mitzvah of the Black Dragon del Toro in exchange for his eternal protection. Jed thinks it's better not to verify the authenticity of this legend. Jed thinks that since the end of the war, there has been a strange magic emanating from the royal city. He thinks something is wrong with the country. At that moment, they lost the video game because Jed wasn't paying attention to it anymore. Pag relaxes and heaves a sigh of relief. He tells Jed he's so lame. Jed gets up from the couch, telling Pag he's going to get some food. He asks Pag if he would like anything and Pag tells him he needs chips and Coke. He also tells him he needs chicken and pizza but Jed tells him the store is too far away. Jed begins to lose his patience and Pag tells him to get the new issue of a weekly manga and a cup of milk tea. He looks over at Jed who gives him a face full of his feet. Jed asks Pag if he's a servant to him and tells him to know his place. Pag apologizes to him. Suddenly, Jed's apartment door is blown away by Jana's kick. She points her sword to Jed and tells him she will take the weight of his head off his shoulders and avenge Lord Claudine. She notices Pag in the apartment. Both Pag and Jed are in a sus position so she asks them what they are doing. Pag tells her not to get the wrong idea. He tells her he's Jed's friend and he's just crashing at his place for a few days. Jana tells him he also said he's friends with Lord Invictus. She asks him if he was the one who let Jed into the castle during the battle. Jed tells her he was the one but Pag tells her Jed's lying. He tells her he was sloppy on that day because he was the only one at the gate to the Demon Lord's castle, and he recounts what transpired. On that day, Jed disguised himself as a delivery man and he delivered the latest issue of a manga to Pag. As Pag is distracted by the manga, Jed takes him out. Jana is disappointed in him. She tells him he's too weak and it is pointless for him to stand guard since he can't even defend the gate. She turns to Jed and tells him she will take the high road and avenge Lord Claudian. She produces another knife from her sleeve and rushes towards Jed with malicious intent. Jana tells Jed this would be his last day on God's green earth. She lunges at him with her sword but he moves out of the way. She cleanly slices the sofa in two, missing both Jed and Pag. Jed lands on his feet. He tells Jana to calm down because she's basically fighting for nothing since the war is over. He tells her he's not a hero anymore and he doesn't want to be her enemy. She looks at him sternly and tells him to quit talking. She attacks him again, swinging her sword at his head. He barely moves in time to make her miss, but she takes some hair strands off his head. She keeps swinging her sword at Jed, trying to land a hit, but he dodges all her attacks. She makes a huge swing but Jed crouches, and she misses. She tries to strike him while crouched but he jumps over her and lands behind her. His feet barely touch the ground before she throws her dagger at him. He dodges it. Suddenly a voice calls out to him from behind and he sees the dagger heading to one of the model figures in his collection. He immediately gains the power of the Flash and runs over to his collection shelf to save the model. He catches the blade before it gets to the model and Jana is surprised at how fast he moved. He asks her if no one told her not to touch other people's collections. He throws the dagger back at her and she blocks it with her sword, but the blade of her sword breaks in the process. She is knocked back by the force of impact and Jed immediately closes the gap between them. He stands before her with a menacing aura covering every inch of his body. She looks up at him scared for her life. She jumps away from him to create some distance. She throws away the remains of her broken swords and takes out 5 daggers from her belt. She places them between her fingers, basically making herself a female Wolverine. She runs towards Jed, who calmly puts his finger in a flick position, and Jana is apprehensive. She jumps behind him and tries to attack him from behind, but he reads it and adjusts the direction of his fingers. Jana throws out her daggers at Jed, but he flicks his fingers several times, destroying the daggers. Jana desperately reaches for her broken sword and attacks Jed, but he simply dodges her attack and kicks her to the walk. He throws the broken sword, which embeds itself on the wall, close to Jana's ear. At this point, Jana loses her will to fight and tells Jed he's truly a hero. Jed asks her if she knew how Claudine died before deciding to get revenge. She tells him he probably killed him with some cheap trick, and Jed completes the sentence for her, showing that he knows her train of thought. He tells her that he and Claudine both fought with their maximum strength, with both their dreams and dignity on the line. He asks her if she's also ready to meet her end since she came to end him. He grabs the broken sword from the wall and Jana accepts her fate. But Jed throws the sword away and tells her the night he defeated Claudine was the end of the battle. He tells her there's no need for anyone to die after the war has ended. This triggers a memory where Claudine tells her he hopes no one dies in the war. Jana begins shedding tears and Pag scolds Jed for making a lady cry. Jed tells Pag he thought he actually said his lines well and apologizes to Jana. He tells her if she really wants revenge, he can let her beat him up without fighting back. He tells her he'll allow that on the condition that her quest for revenge ends there and then. Jana wipes off her tears, gets up on her feet, clenches her fist and raises it in a punching gesture. Though Jed said he wouldn't fight back, he raised a shield to protect himself. Jana punches him and the punch penetrates through his shield and he's knocked back into the wall. Jana tells him she's just taking a break from getting her revenge and she promises Jed she'll come for him. Suddenly, Jed's mental alarm goes off and he tells the others they're all surrounded. He looks through the window blinds to see hundreds of soldiers standing outside the apartment complex. He notices the soldiers are the king's men and concludes that they are not there for him. He looks back at Jana, but she tells him her cover was not blown. Jed looks at Pag and Pag is scared. Jed tells Jana that if the soldiers break it, they should just hand Pag over. Jana agrees and they chuckle naughtily. Pag wonders when they got so close. The Archmage of Catalan walks in front of the apartment complex and smiles in anticipation. The commander tells the Archmage Mr. Zaire that the area around the apartment complex has been evacuated. Zaire tells him to wait for his order before he attacks. The door to the complex opens up and Jed comes out with Pag and Jana. Pag's hands are tied around his back and Zed tells Zaire he has helped capture one of the Big Four. He tells Zaire he can take Pag and Zaire tells him he is a reliable man. He tells him Pag is not the only enemy he has in his house. Zaire tells the soldiers to bring Jed, Pag and Jana to justice according to the decree of the king. Jed tries to explain to Zaire, but he hardly finishes before Zaire casts a spell of infinite gravity on them. They are all pushed face down to the ground and Zaire tells Jed to save his explanation for when he meets the chief judge. He tells Jed he's just here to take him in. Jed slowly gets on his knees and Zaire commends him for being able to withstand his magic. Jed casts a spell of magic reversal which nullifies his magic over them and casts it over Zaire and the soldiers. Zaire is surprised that Jed can use such high-level magic though he's just a swordsman. Jed tells him he was never a swordsman, he just uses swords because it makes him look cool. Zaire stops the spell and tells the ground soldiers to disperse. He orders the second unit of soldiers on the rooftop to launch their attack. Jed looks at the unit and loses his motivation to fight. He takes his only other choice. He grabs Jana and Pag and they book it. Jana asks him why the soldiers are also after him and he tells her it's because members of the Knights always visit him. A strange lady drops from a rooftop and tries to smash Jed into the ground, but he dodges back and she smashes the ground. The strange lady is Maria from the Rose Order. She tells Jed she never thought he would be protecting Pag. She tells him to hand Pag over and Jed gladly does so. He takes Jana and they both run away. Maria takes off her disguise and she's wearing the clothes Pag put on her. Maria tells Pag it's time to put an end to his existence. Pag breaks the ropes holding him and whips out his camera and begins taking as many pictures as he can. Other members of the Rose Order come to back her up. She wonders why they are in their battle outfit when they previously told her the only way to defeat Pag was to distract him by wearing the clothes he gave them. They all agreed to wear the clothes to catch Pag off guard and defeat him. Though Maria was not a party to the idea initially, she eventually gave in. She asks them where their dresses are and they tell her that it would be too embarrassing for them. Maria is furious with them, but she turns back to Pag, who is still taking pictures. She tells the other members she will hold him off and they should look for a chance to take him out. She rushes at Pag with her hammer. Meanwhile, Jed and Jana are still on the run. Two guards block their path and try to capture them, but Jed uses a body enhancement spell to knock one of them down. The other engages Jed in combat, but he uses a speed-up spell to knock him out. Jed and Jana keep running and Jana is convinced Jed is really a mage. They come up against a larger group of soldiers who are determined to capture them. They hop on the walls and escape to the rooftop. They look back to check if they're being followed, but they see no one. Jed thinks they have gotten rid of the soldiers, but a beam of light is cast at him from somewhere in front of him and he blocks it. Zaire stands in front of a higher rooftop with a huge magic circle hanging over his head. He tells Zed to surrender because the whole kingdom is hunting him and he can't escape. Jana asks him how they can escape from so many enemies. Jed shows her a teleport ring and he tries to explain where the ring teleports to, but Jana barely lets him explain. She puts on the ring and they are teleported away from the soldiers. Zaire casts a magic tracking spell to see where Jed and Jana teleported to, but he isn't happy with what he sees. Jana wonders where they are, but suddenly, heavy footsteps approach them. A monster hidden in the dark welcomes Jed back to its den. The monster steps into the light and it's a huge red dragon. Jana is visibly frightened. Jed says hi to the dragon, calling her his master. Jana is surprised he called the dragon his master. The dragon tells him that since he came back, he must be ready to take his punishment. Jed begs his master to calm down and have mercy on him. Jana watches as the dragon gobbles up Jed. She screams out his name as the dragon munches him up. She's wondering why the dragon ate Jed up despite the fact that he called her his master. The dragon spits Jed out and he's covered in saliva, but his hands and legs are now tied. The red dragon changes to her human form and she tells Jed she wants to have a good talk for that day. The red dragon's actual name is Lesai Lucas. She teleports them to her house and Jed kneels down quietly with his arms and legs tied. He looks dejected. Meanwhile, Jana looks around the house. She can't believe the red dragon lives in such a beautiful place. Lesai tells Jed she has a lot of questions to ask him, but she first asks him what he did with her horn. Jed tells her that her horn is well kept and he hasn't done anything with it yet. Lesai casts a spell on Jed to make him tell the truth and she asks him the question again. He tells her because he heard dragon horns contain powerful magic. He sold hers to a noble as a tonic because it was a very sought after item. Lesai punches Jed repeatedly, asking him why he did such a thing to her horn. Jana thinks she's being too dramatic, but she thinks Lesai is cool as well. She stops punching Jed and asks him what his deal is with Jana. She starts punching him again, asking why he messed up her horn and also hooked up with another woman. She keeps punching him, asking him who he sold his conscience to. Jana tries to explain the situation, but Lesai begins crying. She lets go of Jed and flops to the floor. She asks Jed what happened to him now that he's all grown up. She tells him he was so lovely when he was a child, and she wonders how he grew up to become the despicable man he is. She keeps weeping and he tries to console her. Jana asks him if he's been living with Lesai since he was a kid and if he's also a red dragon. Jed tells her he's just an ordinary human who lived with Lesai before he became a hero. Lesai suddenly remembered why Jed lost his conscience. She tells him he changed ever since the day a certain man persuaded him to become a hero. On that day, Gödel and Jed sat at a table having lunch. Gödel tells Jed he must become a hero by defeating the Demon Lord. Then he can save the princess and take her as his bride. Young Jed pictures himself as the hero with the princess in his arms and he makes up his mind. He tells Lesai that he wants to become the hero. Gödel immediately packs his things and bids Jed goodbye. He leaves before Lesai can do anything. Back to the present, Lesai scolds Jed for doing bad things after listening to Gödel, going as far as cutting off her horn. Jed tells her she agreed to him cutting off her horn and she tells him she doesn't care. She tells him she won't let him out of her sight again because it's way too dangerous and he could be charmed by some random wild cats. Pointing at Jana. Jana doesn't understand why she's being called a wild cat. Jed tells her it is indeed dangerous out in the open world, and that's why he came to her. Jed tells her he thought she would bring him back immediately when he left initially. She tells him she thought he went to Catalan to avoid her. Jed doesn't understand what she means and she tells him she can't get into the Catalan because there's a strange guy there. Prince Ruddy is wearing a disguise and standing on a rooftop. He looks down soullessly at the town square. He thinks Rock was foolish to decline his proposal. He walks away as guards lead Rock towards the noose. Rock's crimes were read out to the people who gathered to witness the execution, and the order was given for Rock's execution. As he walked through the crowd of spectators, they jeered at him, calling him a traitor to the king and a lapdog to the Demon Lord. They begin to throw different things at him, but Rock isn't bothered by this one bit. He walks through the crowd calmly and then a lady walks out of the crowd and onto Rock's path eating some skewers. Rock looks over at her and he recognizes Gil, who is his sister. Gil is the eldest sister of the Barkhad family. She could handle a sword very well right from her childhood and she vowed to marry a man stronger than her. At just 15 years old, she was able to defeat the master swordsmen of the older generation and she decided to travel across the continent to challenge different masters, but none were able to defeat her. Because of this, she is still single at 35 years of age. One of the guards tells her not to interfere in official duties. Rock wonders why she came to the square. Another guard figures out that Gil is Rock's older sister. He tries to warn the initial guard, but it's too late. The guard is sent flying. He hits the wall and he's knocked out. The guards and the once enthusiastic crowd can't fathom what is happening. Gil attacks the guards and defeats all of them at once. The crowd scatters after this happens. Gil walks over to the guard standing by Rock and she sends him flying. She says hi to Rock and tells him he looks really worn out. Rock asks her what she's doing there and she tells him their dad sent her. Rock is surprised and asks her if he sent her to save him and she draws out her sword and rests it on his neck. She tells him their father said clearing the family shame shouldn't be entrusted to others. Rock asks her if their father also didn't forgive him for joining the Demon Lord's army. She tells him their father doesn't care about his choice because notoriety elevates the family's reputation. She tells him the reason their father can't forgive him is because he lost to Jed. She tells him he has tarnished the family's dignity and asks him if he has any last words. He tells her since he lost and Lord Claudine is dead as well, he has no regrets about dying at her hands. Gil turns her blade and brings it down, slicing the chains off Rock's neck, wrist, and legs. She tells him he's always gloomy and asks him what happened to his dreams. She tells him to lead the Demon Lord's army since the Demon Lord is no more. She tells him though he lost, the next time he has to win to redeem himself. She reminds him of his identity and tells him no one can defeat him except her. She encourages him to keep going and he becomes teary-eyed. The Golden Order unit of the Catalan soldiers march into the square. Their captain Talon tells the soldiers not to let Rock escape. Gil presents Rock with her sword and tells him to get rid of the guards. Rock defeats all the guards and he enters a one-on-one battle with the captain. The captain almost brings him down, but Rock calmly uses the family blade to send the captain flying. Rock looks the sword over and appreciates the ancestral sword of the Barkhad family called the Crimson Tear. Gil commends him for taking care of the guards quickly and Rock tells her the sword is too powerful for him. Gil tells him to keep the sword because he needs it more than she does. Rock wonders what she would use to fight and she brings out a hairpin, telling him that's all she needs. He asks her how she would explain to their father that she wasn't able to bring him down. She tells him it's not her first time disobeying their father's orders. She tells him their father probably anticipated what she would do and that's the reason he sent her. Rock thanks her for sparing his life and she tells him to come home if he's ever tired. She walks away, telling him to remember he owes her a favor. Rock is back and ready to continue the work of Lord Claudian. Rock walks through the city with a slight bounce on his steps. With the family sword on his hip, he's confident he can overcome any foe. Some suspicious noises come from an alley and he prepares himself for an attack. Maria and her Rose order soldiers to come out of the alley, leading Pag away. They stop when they notice Rock standing there and staring at them. Rock knocks them down and frees Pag. Pag asks Rock what he's doing in the city and Rock tells him it's a story for another day. He tells Pag to follow him back to the Demon Lord's castle because he wants to become the new Demon Lord. Pag asks Rock if he's really planning to wage another war against Catalan. Rock tells him he must fulfill the promise he made to Lord Claudian and wipe out the whole of Catalan. He tells Pag before they do that, they need to retrieve Lord Claudian's staff. Rock walks up to Jana's apartment building and he can feel the staff through the walls. He enters the building and proceeds to her apartment. He opens the door with caution, but the apartment is empty. He enters the apartment and sees a picture of Jed on the wall with a knife piercing through it. He removes the knife and recognizes it as Jana's knife. He turns to Pag and tells him that Jana is the owner of the apartment. He's relieved to know that she's safe. Rock looks over at the staff of Claudine wrapped up in some clothes. He walks towards it and picks it up. He looks at a picture mounted on Jana's bedstand showing a picture of her, Rock, and Lord Claudian. He smiles as he remembers when Lord Claudian first introduced him to Jana and asks him to be her sword master. He also remembers the numerous training sessions he put her through to ensure she mastered the art of the sword. Then he recalls the day they took the photo and how Lord Claudian told him they may never get another chance to take such a picture. Rock is sad he doesn't know the whereabouts of Jana and Pag tells him Jana left with Jed. Rock can't believe his ears. Pag tells him Catalan forces were chasing him and Jed took Jana and escaped. Rock wonders what Jana is doing with the hero. Pag tells him though they fought initially, they settled their differences. Pag tells Rock not to worry about Jana because Jed is a nice guy and they get along quite well. Rock imagines Jana in the company of Jed and Pag and he cries out her name. His voice echoes across the skies and Jana hears a whisper of it all the way to Lesai's house. The news of Jed and Jana's escape gets to the king and the king is furious. He's also furious that Rock was saved from the Nine Noose and Pag escaped from the Rose Order and fled with Rock. The king feels overwhelmed by the amount of L's he took in one day. Rupel tells him this isn't the time to feel dejected and encourages him to take action. The king thinks he must act fast before Prince Ruddy shows up. Suddenly, Ruddy enters the room and asks his father if the issues can now be considered a national crisis. The king tells him it isn't that serious and they have it all under control. Rupel asks him if he doesn't realize the severity of the problem. He tells the king that the Big Four escaped, the hero betrayed them and forces of the Demon Lord could attack anytime. He asks why their protector, the Black Dragon Dardo, hasn't appeared yet. The king, looking terrified, tells Rupel to be quiet. Ruddy laughs hysterically and a black mist appears around him. A voice tells him to obey the agreement and calls him Dardo. A purple beam bursts through the building and Ruddy turns into the Black Dragon Dardo. He bursts through the roof and lets out a terrifying roar. Rupel points at the dragon. He tries to form words but he can't. The king tells him he shouldn't have seen that and he draws his sword to make sure Rupel doesn't have a chance to spread the news. Ruddy hopes Lesai is prepared for him. Dardo roars and the people of the city notice him. Rock and Pag look at him round the corner of an alley. Dardo moves swiftly towards Lesai. Over at Lesai's house, she tells Jed to stay in his room and not go anywhere. Jed is tied with some ropes and he asks Lesai to at least untie him. Lesai tells him if she unties him, he'll just run away. She tells him he's safe in her house because Catalan soldiers won't dare to attack them. Suddenly, a magic barrier is erected around her house. Dardo fires a purple energy beam at Lesai. Lesai generates a magic circle to block the attack. She turns back to Jed, asking him if he's alright. He tells her he's fine though his shield is slowly disintegrating. He tells her the power level of the attack is so high. Lesai's castle is reduced to rubble and Dardo ceases his attack. Lesai uses that opportunity to transform into her dragon form and she sprouts wings. She lunges at Dardo but he summons a shield to protect himself. Lesai slams against the shield and the force smashes Dardo to the ground. Lesai uses her magic to open circles which drop columns of explosives that blow up, creating a huge explosion. Jana tells Jed the battle is way too terrifying for her. Jed drinks a potion to restore his health and he tells her Lesai is considered a formidable dragon even among dragons. He tells her most opponents don't survive her first attack but Dardo rises from the ground and Lesai is shocked to see he's still alive. Dardo regenerates and he attacks Lesai with his teeth, biting her shoulder. Lesai screams out in pain and fights back. She shoots an energy beam that pierces through Dardo, but he regenerates. Ruddy uses his shadows to hold her down and he asks her if her power left her. She breaks free of the bonds and keeps firing the energy beam, but Dardo just regenerates and keeps attacking her with his shadows. Jana asks Jed how Dardo is still alive. Jed thinks Dardo's regeneration isn't ordinary. He decides to end the battle and prevent it from being prolonged. Jana asks him what he plans to do and he says he's going to save Lesai. Jana asks him what he can do in such a situation since he's only human. Jed agrees with her and thinks there's no way he can win if he attacks directly. Jed thinks of what he can do and he gets an idea involving the dragon's second attack. Jed gives Jana a necklace and asks her to run away as fast as she can. Jana is about to tell him something, but he teleports out of there. Dardo and Lesai are still locked in combat and Jed suddenly appears on her shoulder. Lesai asks him if he's alright and he tells her he's fine. Jed looks over at Dardo. He thinks since Dardo can target them from so far away, he must not be using his visual sense. Dardo notices Jed and decides to go for him. Jed teleports away and lands on Lesai's head. He tells Lesai to remain calm and he transforms her back to her human form. He catches her in his arms and tells her there's only one way to escape tracking. Jed does a disguise and transfer magic technique and several magic circles come to light in front of him. Jed tells Dardo goodbye and disappears. Ruddy is interested in Jed's game of hide and seek, but he knows Jed can't hide from him. Jed appears close to Jana, who has since left the scene of the battle. He drops Lesai, tells her not to move and chops off her second horn. Jana is shocked Lesai's magical power drops and she picks up her horn crying sadly. Dardo screams in frustration, wondering how Lesai's power reaction disappeared. Jed tells Jana they were being Dardo tracked them by following Lessie, and by concealing her power. Dardo would think they already escaped through the barrier. Lesai tells Jed he's not concealing her power but stripping her of it. Jed tells her he can't use conventional ways because her power is too intense. Dardo transforms back to Ruddy and the barrier disintegrates. Ruddy wonders why Jed and Lesai ran instead of putting an end to his misery. Jed looks at him with pity. Rock is back at the Demon Lord's castle. He puts on some clothes and walks into the throne room where some other people are waiting. Karn, who is the last of the Big Four, is seated on the throne. Rock and Karn stare at each other sternly without breaking eye contact. The king stands over a fallen lapel and Ruddy feels regret as it begins to rain. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.